Like every year, this is my talk about the institutional accreditation. This is an ongoing program which has been launched already 7-8 years ago from the society with this intent. So to try to standardize and improve the practice of, in this case, lung resection or lung cancer resection in Europe. And the ESTS accreditation remain a quality label. There is no political meaning or implication attached or regulatory implication. Is purely a quality label and certainly means to improve practice. And the reason is shown in this slide, and this is just an example, and this is a snapshot from the current Silver Book, and you see, for instance, that there is an extreme variability of the proportion of patients with DLCO measured before lung resection, which is one of the parameters or the processes that compose the composite performance score. So extreme variability, the same when it comes to preoperative invasive mediastinal staging in a clinical N2 disease. So the purpose of the accreditation is to try to minimize this variability and improve practice. When we detect these graphs at unit level, it means that there is still work to do. And it means that this process endpoint, this element, has still a significance, a meaning to measure. These are the eligibility criteria for the accreditation. So a minimum of 150 anatomic lung resection in the last 3 years. We limit the process to European unit. Obviously, the head of the unit, or at least the clinical audit lead, must be an ESTS member. And the composite performance score, and I will explain what this measure is, what this metric is, should be positive. And we introduced 2 years ago the element of completeness as a parameter to assess quality of the variables. So the completeness of the variables that are used to calculate the risk-adjusted mortality, which is a fundamental element of the CPS, should be greater than must be greater than 70%. This is a composite performance score, is a complex metrics which incorporate in a single number basically 3 processes and 2 outcomes. And you see the processes and the outcomes. The outcomes are risk adjusted, so it's a morbidity and mortality. And so far, the models for morbidity and mortality are calculated based on the Eurolung risk models presented in Naples a few years ago. And these are the models used until this year to adjust morbidity and mortality. The problem we have is the completeness of variable we detect in the database when it comes to calculate this predicted outcome. You see that many units that, this is just a representation, this is a partial list, but it's just as an example, you know, many units with a CPS, with a positive CPS that would be eligible potentially for accreditation. Then when you see the completeness of the predicted mortality, many of them score below 70%, well below 70%. So one consideration was perhaps it is that the models are too redundant, there are too many variables, so it may be sometimes difficult to collect all those variables. So what we have done this year, and this will be presented tomorrow before the presidential address, we have tried to simplify the Eurolung models to reduce the number of variables, trying to maintain the discrimination ability of the models. And this is just an anticipation of what you will see tomorrow. This is the process of accreditation. There is a central calculation of the composite score. You don't have to do anything. Then the invitation letters are sent out from ESDS to the eligible unit. Obviously, the eligible unit need to accept the process. This involves minimum cost of 1,500 euro as, to cover the local inspection of the auditors that need to check the quality of the data or the correspondence of the data with those submitted to the database, and some structural criteria in the unit. Then these inspectors produce a report like this. This is just an example of what happened in Leeds a few years ago. And this is, for instance, a table representing the correspondence between the data source and the data submitted to the database. And this is forwarded to the database committee that need to express a judgment, and the judgment is then approved, need the ratification from the council. In terms of completeness and quality of variables, we have this, screenshot in the ESDS database. Each unit can see their own quality of data, and this is continuously updated, with new information. So you can keep track of your composite score and also where you can improve and the quality of your variables. This is the list of the currently accredited with valid accreditation so far, or reaccreditation, revalidation, and you will probably see some of your unit. Some of them will expire this year, and this is the table of the eligible unit, and this is the most awaited table. So each year we'll project this at the database session. So all these units will be contacted after the meeting, to inform that they are eligible and to see whether they want to participate to the process. Finally, I just wish to mention this. This is an app that is about ready and will be soon available on Google Play and Apple Store for Android and iPhone to calculate the Eurolung based on the new models, so the simplified, the parsimonious models that will be presented tomorrow. So this is something that we thought would be useful for the thoracic surgeons when you see the patient in clinic or when you discuss the cases at tumor board. This is not meant for patient selection, but is meant to provide an estimate of a risk and to discuss with patients and with colleagues at multidisciplinary meetings. And obviously you can find all this information on our website on the ESDS Quality Certification Program link. Thank you very much for your attention.
Are there any questions from the floor with regard to accreditation process? Nobody is interested in? I will take my privilege to ask one to Alex. How do you think in the future it will evolve? I mean, do you think there will be more and more eligibility, or only 1, 2, 3 units a year? Do you have any?
I hope it will be more eligibility. It depends whether we keep the criteria the same, yes, or we increase the thresholds. But so far, the meaning was to be inclusive rather than exclusive, obviously, because we want to promote good practice, and we don't want to award anyone compared to another unit. So my hope is that more and more units will be eligible in the future, especially by increasing the quality of data. You see how many would be eligible, if they had good data, good completeness of data.
I think I just want to harp on what you have said. Being with regard to what we have done in France, being inclusive is a key idea. Then let's be together, and then we will have time to increase the threshold. Obviously, we have not to put the threshold at 0, but minimum threshold, be inclusive, and once we will be together at a certain level, let's go forward. But just with that, at this level, we see that the quality in the database increase. This means that the quality of patients' care increase also, and it's very important to say, I think. You have one question, Benjamin?
Yeah, thank you. Benjamin Kozauer. Alex, a comment and a question. When I look at your list of potential programs to join, it's a fairly small list for the number of participants who are going to be, coming here to the ESTS meeting. So how did you guys select, I guess, this bar of 50 anatomic lung resections annually to get to 150 over 3 years?
There is not a rule. I think it's the minimum number that could give us reliable figures when it comes to risk-adjusting morbidity and mortality. If you go lower, especially for rare events, you risk to be not accurate. So on the other hand, we want to be inclusive. So if we increase the volume or the minimum volume, you say, okay, we accept only programs with at least 300 in 3 years, then we risk to exclude. And we don't pay much attention to volume, but we need to have a minimum volume to calculate the score. So that's the problem, unless we use other metrics or other mean to assess quality.
Understood. And part of the reason I asked in the STS when we built our model for lobectomy for lung cancer, to get a model reliability that was accepted, we need a minimum of 10 lobectomies per year, so 30 over 3 years, which is dramatically different than what you have. It still seems like an incredibly low, number for people trying to participate in a thoracic database, but I think it would dramatically increase, who could participate.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. William Steup from the Netherlands. Alex, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm very interested in your app program, the CPS, because we're entering the era of the shared decision-making. Are you already working on the next step to have this app in your outpatient clinic to discuss the items and to get some sort of risk stratification in front of the patient for do this, or do that? Is that the next step on your app?
This is the purpose, of having the app as a practical. We developed together with Zalan. I really need to thank him for all the effort he put on this. But the purpose, the main purpose, was to not to use it as a patient selection tool, but to discuss, to have a figure to discuss with the patient. During the shared decision, during the counseling, so for shared decision making, but also during MDT, because when you discuss especially high-risk patients, at least you have a reliable figure to discuss with your medical oncologist or radiation oncologist colleagues and say, okay, let's try to choose the most appropriate treatment for this patient. And obviously this needs to be tested with the patient to see the reaction of the patient. That would be very interesting. Yeah. This is nothing new. You know, we always discuss with the patient the risk. It would be interesting to see their reaction when you take the phone and calculate and have numbers or range of numbers to give them.
We use it in other disciplines and it works perfectly well. So it needs to be evaluated, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll be soon out, so we can try to design something together.
If I may say something, I used that with the Thoraco score a few years ago, and it was not so cool to say when the patient was asking, say, hey, your mortality risk is 9%. But most of the time he said, but for me, at the end, I will be alive or dead. That's the never-ending discussion.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting, very interesting approach. Yes, Akif.
Alex, thank you very much. As you know, our accreditation has been expired. We would like to apply for the reaccreditation. Would there be any prerequisite for application for reaccreditation?
Well, it's just a composite score, the same eligibility criteria. There is no other prerequisites.
Okay, thank you.
Same.
I'm afraid we are running late, very late. So I will call now Giulia Veronesi to update us on the current state